Welcome into Weather Wednesday here at New England Storm Center. So, you know how last week I titled the episode New England's Weather Until Further Notice? Well, a week later, it is still until further notice. The overall pattern, of course, we are getting a shift in the pattern that's going to bring us a little bit of different weather. And this particular shift in the pattern has to do with the setup of a Rex block, which is a high pressure located directly north or nearly directly north of a low pressure system. We had this over Memorial Weekend. The setup was much different that time as it gave all of New England very warm conditions. This one, not the same setup, and it's going to start breaking down tomorrow. As we look at the general setup, you can see that the high pressure is off to the east in the Gulf of Maine. And this location of the high pressure is why northern New England is going to get into the heat and southern New England is going to struggle to get into some heat. The heat is actually coming from the north, from Canada. From the west, it's been bottled up to the west. But this pattern shift did allow the heat to start to slide eastward. So it is dropping into New England from the north, which is why northern Maine and northern Vermont are going to get into the heat much more than everyone else. So this setup really lends itself to why southern New England is really struggling to get into any kind of heat this time. The forecast really kind of nosedived, especially for Thursday for southern New England, but even up into Maine and Vermont, where at one point, just a couple of days ago, it was looking like potentially widespread low 90s. There were even some signals going up to mid 90s. And now it's looking like 90s are not going to happen anywhere in New England this time around, and it looks like the warmest temperatures will be up in Maine, up into the mid 80s, maybe some isolated upper 80s, but again, 90s, not looking likely anywhere in New England. And that's because it really has to do with the flow, with the wind direction. Of course, the wind direction around high pressure and low pressure is the opposite. High pressure diverges from the center, which causes the wind direction to be clockwise, where low pressure is converging, which has the wind going counterclockwise around the center. So with this setup, with the high pressure just to New England's east, the flow is coming from the east. So we have an onshore flow, which keeps southern and eastern New England cooler. For Thursday and Friday, the flow switches to a more southerly direction over the weekend. So what that does allow for is for some of the energy from the low pressure system to our south to creep up into southern New England. Some of that energy will be able to ride the flow up into southern New England, the clouds, some showers. Again, at this time, it's still looking like Thursday and Friday are going to be mainly dry. As the low pressure continues to slide eastward and away from New England, that will allow more and more energy from the southern system to come into New England. So clouds will be increasing across the region on Friday. Temperatures will remain warm on Friday. They'll remain warm through the weekend, and southern New England's temperatures will also be going up through the weekend. And this setup also increases the dew points and the humidity. There's the most confidence in this forecast is that New England is going to be very humid, especially this weekend. The dew points will be ticking up through the rest of the week, through the weekend. And Sunday, parts of southern New England could even have dew points to 70, which is really tropical-like air. So while the temperatures won't be too hot, a lot of low 80s over the weekend, it is going to be oppressive out there, as we have not had humidity like this for a while. This is the first real bout of this type of summer humidity this season. And this increase in the humidity, along with the energy from the system from the south, being able to spread north through the weekend is going to lead to an unsettled weekend. There's likely going to be scattered showers and thunderstorms, heavy downpours possible throughout the weekend. Again, just like we've had for most of the time, it's not going to be raining all day, every day. There's going to be scattered downpours and thunderstorms on both Saturday and Sunday. Right now, it does look like Sunday is going to be the stormier day of the 2 weekend days. At this time, it does not look like a widespread severe outbreak is going to happen this weekend. With this setup, there's always a chance for isolated strong to severe storms, but the main threat is going to be heavy tropical-like downpours with this humidity where it's going to be. So at the very beginning, I said that New England's weather is stuck in this pattern, this overall pattern, until further notice. Still, this pattern, this basically omega block, is so stuck, and it's just showing really not much signs of breaking down with this unrelenting heat in the middle part of the country. If you're wondering where summer is, it's in the country's midsection. South Texas is just baking, and there is no relief for them in sight as temperatures stay up over 100 degrees down there. And then you have the east and the west coast staying cooler and unsettled. There was a ski resort in Colorado. I forget which one it was. I'll look it up and put the name of it down in text. But they had to delay their summer activities. They were going to open for their summer activities last weekend. They had to postpone that because it snowed. So this pattern just stuck where it is. On that note, if you are sick of this cooler and unsettled weather in New England, I have good news and I have bad news. And both of this comes from the NOAA's 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks. I'll start with the bad news for you, so we end on a positive note for this segment. I do want to get to the tropics, but the good news, no, I wanted to start with the bad news. Sorry. The bad news is that the unsettled weather is looking to continue until further notice. That's what's really not showing any signs of relenting. Again, both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks show New England with a pretty good amount of confidence of having above average precipitation. Now, for the good news, kind of an interesting development. Both the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 days, New England is actually being favored to have above average temperatures. They are leaning toward that way. As you can see, it's not we're not deep into the oranges and reds, which means confidence isn't that high, but right now they are leaning toward above average. Looking ahead at some of the longer term guidance, the models, they are showing pretty seasonable conditions. Again, low 80s a lot for this upcoming weekend, and some upper 70s looking beyond the weekend. There does look like it will be a cool down mid next week, but again, that's a week out. There is some model disagreement on temperatures, of course, when you get to a week plus out. You know, the models are going to disagree on just about everything, but early indications are showing that it's not looking that cool coming up as we get into late June and we start getting into July. So, moving on to the tropics, we have a couple of disturbances out there. We have Tropical Storm Brett, which started as a tropical wave off the coast of Africa. Pretty interesting. In June, we typically see those tropical waves come out later in the season. This is early for that, but we do have Tropical Storm Brett. The models are in very good agreement that this is going to stay south of the United States. It is looking like it will remain a tropical storm. Doesn't look like it's going to develop that or strengthen that much over the course of the next several days. It does look to head toward the Central America as I bring up the spaghetti models. Let me just bring those up. So here it is. This is not this big red circle. That is not Tropical Storm Brett. That is another invest that has not developed. This is Tropical Storm Brett right here as I record this. And you can see very good agreement. Again, these ones are for the invest that is behind it, but very good agreement that Tropical Storm Brett is going to stay south of Puerto Rico, the Dominican, Cuba, and head toward Central America, as you can see. Again, a lot of model agreement having it head toward Honduras, Nicaragua area. Again, still, it's actually weakening here to a tropical depression by the weekend as it starts approaching Central America. So now coming back over to the invest, a second tropical wave, back-to-back tropical waves in June. Very interesting. This one does look like it will take the very familiar turn to the north as it comes west. Again, the spaghetti model's in pretty good agreement that it is going to track similar to where Brett is, but then right around where Brett is now, it does look like it is going to take that turn to the north. This one tracking north of Puerto Rico, the Dominican, and Haiti. This will very likely, in all likelihood, this is going to continue this northward, excuse me, this northward bend, continue up this way and pull out into the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. A lot of storms do that. So this storm does have an 80% chance of developing into a tropical depression over the next couple days, according to the National Hurricane Center. Looking at projected intensities, a lot of models are keeping it below Category 1 strength. There are a couple that shoot up into hurricane strength, but for the most part it looks to stay a tropical storm, and it will in all likelihood, bend away from the United States. Of course, that's not a given, that's not locked in, but a lot of storms that take this particular path, now that this one is projected to, do continue to bend to the north and will eventually bend to the northeast away from the United States. Again, Bermuda will have to pay attention to them. So, with all of that said, that's going to do it for this edition of the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So, as always, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and you will hear from me again next Wednesday.